Hey guys, welcome back to Mousedream Gaming Studios. I'm Craig, and today we're going to go over one list for each detachment in the Tyranid Codex. Now these lists are probably not going to be your tournament winning list, but I think they're a very good starting point with some play testing, fine tuning, tweaking. They're a good starting point to get you to a pretty powerful list that will feature each detachment we have. Now I think all the detachments here have significant play. I think all of them are pretty good. Some of them obviously are better than others, and some of them I think are still a big wild card. So this is early. If you're watching this later on in 10th edition, this is still early Tyranid Codex, so we haven't play tested everything. I'm sure I'll make a video like this in the future with points updates and once we've actually tried a lot of the units here. So this is just this list. Before we dive in, I want to mention a few things. There will be no video on Monday if you're watching this time of recording, because on Tuesday we're doing our first 10th edition live stream battle report. It will be my Tyranids, one of these lists sort of, against Connor and his Necrons. That'll be at 12:30 p.m. US Central Time, so I think that's 6:30 for you guys in the UK, and you can go from there. I know the time isn't going to be great for everybody, but I try to get as wide of an audience as possible, and we'll continue to mix up the time in the future so everybody gets a chance to see a live battle report for us. So just want to mention that. I'll put the link, let's see, is it this side? This side? I haven't done that in a while. One of those sides, there'll be the link. Just you can like it or whatever and remind yourself that it's going to be happening then. Again, just thank you to our members and our subscribers. And now, with all that out of the way, let's get into today's video. So we're just gonna get right into it. I've got 5-6 lists to use for you, or to show for you guys, and we'll start with the first one, Crusher Stampede. So Crusher Stampede really likes to favor the play of monsters. Obviously, you can take other units. But monsters, really, if you want to keep the thematic feel of Crusher Stampede, is what you want. So in the character section, we have the Death Leaper and a Neurotyrant. And I had the points left over, so I gave the Neurotyrant an Ominous Presence enhancement, which makes it OC 6, which is pretty good for a single monster. Might help you in some late game scoring or something like that. For the other detachments, we have a Biovore, because secondaries are still a thing when you're playing Monster Mesh, and they will be difficult. So Biovore will help you get as many points as possible there. 2 Exocrine, because they're great shooting platforms. A Haruspex for some good melee. 2 Maleceptors. I think Maleceptors are very powerful in general, but in Crusher Stampede, they have the wounds and the durability and the invuln to tank a lot of shots. So your opponent, it can turn your opponent's shooting phase into a sink trying to go after one of these. So 2 of those. We then have 2 Neurolictors. Battle Shock is great. They can cause Battle Shock. +1 to wound on monsters. It means they're probably going to be wounding most of their targets on 2s or 3s, which helps a lot in melee there. We got a single Ripper Swarm because, again, we had the points. So we're going to take that to help score what secondaries we can. 2 Screamer Killers. Now, I don't think Screamer Killers, again, are the most competitive. Really, you could just take 2 more Haruspexes if you want, but I think Screamer Killers can be fun in the detachment here. I wish they were maybe 10-15 points cheaper, but we're putting 2 Screamer Killers in there because I like them. The side of the Hero Duel also is going to make a journey in here. It's going to make it really difficult for your opponent to choose what to shoot. The side of the Hero Duel running up the board, that's great in melee, and it's got good shooting. The Screamer Killers probably running on a flank. And then you've got the Exocrines and the Maleceptors shooting up from everywhere, and then a Haruspex as just a free ball wherever he wants to go. And then finally, we do have a Trigon, because what more would your opponent want with a whole bunch of monsters barreling down at it than one rapid ingressing right in their front lines that they also have to deal with? So Crusher Stampede is a very interesting detachment when you play all monsters. Some matchups you're going to go against, you are just going to obliterate your opponent, and it's not even going to be great. Like, if you go up against a lot of Custodes lists are going to struggle against this. Grey Knights are going to really struggle against this too. Some lists like Eldar, obviously, with all of their Bright Lances and D Cannons, might make quick work of this list. So it's a Crusher Stampede, really one of two ways. You kind of gamble on, am I going to face Eldar, or am I going to face even Knights or something? If you are, you might struggle. If you aren't, you're in for a fun game. So that's Crusher Stampede. We'll then move on to Unending Swarm. Now, at the time of recording this, you guys have seen my Unending Swarm battle report. I really like the list, so I kind of took it and I changed a few things up. I don't think Norn Emissary is the most competitive in an Unending Swarm. I think you just want more bodies on the table. So with that being said, we have a Death Leaper, a Neuro Tyrant, a Tervagon, and a Winged Prime in the character selection. Now the Winged Prime is something I've gone back and forth on. I kind of like it, but I don't necessarily need it. So you might feel you want to switch it out. With those, we have a big block of 20 gargoyles. This is what the Tyranid Prime is going to join with. He is going to advance them up the board, be 18 inches away. I'm not going to take the enhancement. I don't think the enhancement's worth the points. I'd rather have a Ripper Swarm for it. So you'll pay the strat, get them an auto 6-inch advance. They'll be 18 inches up the board. Kind of spread them out so they form almost a big line. And as soon as your opponent shoots them, you move. Oh, and then they can shoot. First, they shoot. Then they move another 6 inches. And now they are, 24 inches up the board. They're in your opponent's front line, essentially. They'll be an inch away. As soon as your opponent shoots them, they'll move into melee. So I think that is a fun shenanigan. I haven't tried it, but I think it could be pretty good. So we'll go with that one. Then 10 more gargoyles for taking the objective, deep striking, screening, whatever the case. They're so good. We're running 3 blocks of 20 Hormagaunts. They're good. They're fast. They can go to the flank objectives. You can use those to keep respawning. Just speed, mobility, clogging up the board for scoring primer is their name of the game. We're going to bring 2 groups of 20 Termagants. I think you should take these with Devourers. They stack really well with the Tervagon, so 2 groups of 20 is probably all you need as long as you can keep them alive with the Tervagon, respawning them back and forth. Battle line, Biovore, easy for helping to score secondaries. In Exocrine, you are going to need something that takes out that elite infantry that your Gaunts just can't handle. So an Exocrine will be good there. 2 Neurolictors, these are awesome. Cosm Battle Shock will allow you to get +1 to wound on models with your Gaunts. +1 to wound with Gaunts means they're going to be wounding most things on 4s, which is good, or even 3s depending on what the target is. A single Pyrovore, just for, again, ignoring cover, popping on the board, doing actions, whatever the case is. 2 individual Ripper Swarms, a unit of Venonthropes just to create that durability bubble of having stealth and cover at all times. And then 2 units of 3 Zoanthropes. You could combine these and do 1 big block of 6. Kind of depends on how you're feeling. I've done both. I've done 2 blocks of 3 and 1 block of 6. I like them both ways. I can't really say one way or other. There aren't really any stratagems in this detachment where Zoanthropes would benefit in being a block of 6 over 2 of 3. So yeah, that's how I run that. I think this one is it's got a great potential. The name of the game with this again is you want to score as many primary and secondary. You want to score as many primary points and deny as many primary points on your opponent for the first 3 turns, and with that hope that you've done enough damage in the scoring game to allow it so your opponent can't catch up in the later games. It's not as easy to do it in this edition as it was in 9th edition in terms of the way primary works, but I still think it has a lot of play. Again, some armies are going to walk through this. Custodes is going to be one of those lists that probably will have no problem dealing with this. They have so much shooting and melee, and you really can't hurt them with Gaunts. But some other lists, they might struggle. Like Eldar might struggle with this. They don't have a ton of shots that can handle them, but it's a lot of big shots typically. Anyway, that's Unending Swarm. We'll then go to Vanguard Onslaught. Now, Vanguard Onslaught is a interesting one as well. It feels like when you play Vanguard Onslaught, you should have 18 Leapers, 30 Gene Stealers, 3 Lictors, 3 Neurolictors, Death Leaper, maybe some Warriors, with a prime to give them the advance and charge, but I don't think that that's really the best way Vanguard Onslaught plays. I think it's great to have units that are aggressive, kind of stall your opponent for a turn or two, maybe do some hit and run tactics. However, the units that do that, the Leapers, the Gene Stealers, and the Lictors, they don't hit very hard. Like, they can hit hard, but they're very I guess they're more glass cannon-y is what I should be saying. They're very glass cannon where they will die. They'll die very fast. And if your entire army is made of that stuff, they're not going to last very long, so that's unfortunate. So I think what you really need is a list like this, and I'll go through it here. You got Death Leaper, Neuro Tyrant with the Hunting Grounds, because I have the points, it's a nice one. Broodlord with the Neuro Node, again, it's a nice enhancement to take. And the Winged Tyranid Prime, I'm giving him, the Winged Hive Tyrant, and I'm giving him the Chameleonic enhancement. Just stealth on this big monster is pretty good. And he's going to be one of your bigger damage dealers. 2 units of 10 Gargoyles, again, taking some early objectives, deep striking, whatever you need them for. Biovore for some secondary. Exocrine and 2 Maleceptors to kind of lay down some heavy fire, support that midfield. The Exocrine will sit in the back. The Maleceptors will walk up to the midfield, hopefully under limited fire while you have your other units tying up your opponent's line. We have a Neurolictor, a Trigon for rapid ingressing, just continue to put that pressure on your opponent. 10 Gene Stealers to go with the Broodlord, 2 individual Rippers, and 2x6 Von Ryan Leapers. So the main thing, as I said, is the Leapers are going to cause problems for your opponent right off the bat. The Gene Stealers and the Broodlord are going to follow it up, and probably the Winged Hive Tyrant is going to follow that one up as well. And then by then, you've got your opponent has already had to deal with a lot of stuff, and they've got to deal with Maleceptors and a Trigon just sitting in the back laying waste to your opponent, while the Gargoyles are off scoring things, and so with the Rippers. So I think this is how it plays. If you want to play thematic and take all Vanguard Invader units, by all means go for it. I just think it doesn't do well into all matchups. Like if you play against Knights, you're going to struggle, where with some of these monsters, it'll give you a better shot against Knights than other things. So that's Vanguard Onslaught for my opinion. So this next one is Synaptic Nexus. Now a lot of people are leaning towards this being the most competitive one we have, at least out of the new ones. I think that definitely holds water. It's tough to say for sure so far, but this is definitely the easiest one to build a list for. There's a lot of options you can do for this one, and it lends itself towards 10th edition, which is a shooty edition. This one provides damage protection at range, and it provides damage increased output at range. So really what you kind of want in 10th edition. So the list I am bringing today, or I am showing off today, is again, some things you're going to see a lot. So again, the Death Leaper and a Neuro Tyrant I think are pretty much auto takes if you haven't picked that up already. Now this one, we're bringing a Foot Tyrant with Synaptic Control. I don't like the Foot Tyrant a lot. However, Synaptic Nexus has some really good stratagems that are battle tactic, which are the ones the Hive Tyrant can trigger for free. You've got one that worsens the opponent's AP. It goes on one of your units, and all AP coming into them for that phase is 1 less, which is very good. And you also have the one that you pick a Synapse creature and you pick a target. All units within 6 inches of that Synapse creature get to reroll 1s to hit and wound against that opponent target at range. So 2 very good strats you probably want to be doing multiple times a turn at some point. And then Synaptic Control is -1 damage, just makes them that much more durable. Reduce damage by 1, you can be a little more aggressive with the Tyrant than otherwise. Battle line, 10 Gargoyles. They're great for taking an early objective or deep striking. In the other detachments, we have Biovore for secondaries, 2 Exocrines, 2 Maleceptors, and 2 Neurolictors. The Exocrines and the Maleceptors are going to be the bulk of your damage dealing. They're going to be laying tons of firepower off there for your opponent. So definitely good units to have. The Neurolictors are going to be kind of toying with the middle objectives, as well as staying outside of your opponent's threat range, but still causing those battle shock abilities, giving your stuff, +1 to wound on top of all those potential rerolls. We got some Rippers in there. Got some Barb Gaunts. Barb Gaunts are pretty good. You can use them as just an objective holder, or if you go up against the right opponent that fears Barb Gaunts, like a Necron Warrior Blob, imagine Barb Gaunts with rerolling ones to hit and wound on a group of Necron Warriors. It's going to just lay waste to them. 2 individual Pyrovores. They're nice to pop on from Strategic Reserve and take the cover off of your opponent. And then we have 1 unit of 6 Zoanthropes. Zoanthropes are very, very good shooting units. Imagine them getting rerolls, ones to hit and wound. And finally, we have a Norn Assimilator. Now, the Norn Assimilator isn't the most competitive unit in the Tyranid book right now. It's very expensive for what it does. Now, what it does when it hits, it's powerful, but it's expensive and it's a little bit fragile. Now, with what you can do with Synaptic Nexus, and why I like the Norn Assimilator in this, is you've got access to +1 to advance and charge. You've got access to +1 to hit and melee, which helps if he's bracketed, and you've got access to a 5-up invuln save. These are all things to better your Norn Assimilator. You also have the ability to use the strat, which is -1 to people's AP, incoming AP, which essentially gives him a 4-up save against AP3 weapons. Very powerful. In that case, stick him in cover, and now you have a 3-up save against the las cannon, which is very, very good. Next with him is, I think he's very good at popping on in Strategic Reserve, harpooning a vehicle or monster if possible, and then getting into combat quick that way. I think that will be a way to keep him alive, get him into the opponent's lines quick, and there he is. Probably still want to go for the objective control. 15 plus 5 Feel No Pain. Hopefully there's an objective on the edge that you can Strategic Reserve yourself onto late game. So that's Synaptic Nexus. I like it. You could play without the Assimilator and take more Zoanthropes. I think for a lot of people who don't want to play with the big monster and want to play to the most competitive they can, you will probably see no Norn Assimilator. You'll probably see 6 more Zoanthropes, and then throw in maybe another Lictor or a unit of Warriors or something to kind of control the middle board as well. So I like it. I've had fun with Synaptic Nexus. It's probably one I'm going to try out more. But one I'm trying out even more is the Assimilation Swarm. Now, if you are a semi-regular viewer or regular viewer, you know that the Assimilation Swarm is one of my favorites. I haven't played it yet. I'm still prepping all the models to run this type of list out there. But I think it's a big wild card. I can see it doing really well. I can also see it having a lot of weaknesses and not doing well. I want to play it a lot to see if I can get the most out of it, because it seems fun. So, shocker to no one, in the character slot we have Death Leaper and a Neurotyrant. Just great characters, don't need to say much else. A new arrival in the character slot is the Parasite with the Biophagic Flow. Now, Biophagic Flow increases the aura at which we can respawn units or heal. So I like that one because it's on Parasite, who can just fly around and get to where he needs to go in order to cause those respawns for future turns. He also spawns Rippers, which are Harvester units, so you can in turn get an extra Harvester unit here or there to help get more regenning. I do like that a lot. Battle line, 10 Gargoyles. Gargoyles are great. I like them. I think most lists should have a unit of 10. In the other data sheets, this is where it gets crazy. We got a Biovore. We got 3 Harusfexes. You have to take in an Assimilation Swarm, in my opinion, a minimum of 3 Harusfexes. Now, technically, it's also the maximum, but 3 Harusfexes are needed to best benefit this list. 2 Neurolictors, because getting +1 to wound and causing battle shocks are great. A unit of 2 Rippers. They're going to sit on like a home field objective and just help respawn. 2 individual Rippers to deep striking, do secondaries. A regular Lictor. Objective control is something this list might struggle a little bit, so having some things to get on the objectives early and help contest those is going to be good. Now in this list I'm going to try 2 units of Neurogons. The thought behind that is that these units of this list is lacking a bit of Synapse. It has the Tyrant, and it has, as you'll see later down, it has some Zoanthropes. And that's about it for Synapse. Now, thankfully, the stratagems in the Assimilation Swarm don't really care about Synapse like some of the other detachments. However, Battle Shock is still a thing, and we do want to be cognizant of that. So I'm going to take 2 units of the Neurogons. The goal is to keep them within 18 inches of the Neurotyrant, and he can give them Synapse with their little Neuraloids, and then those things have 6-inch Synapse bubbles, 1 on each flank, or 1 pushing up the middle, something like that is the plan with those. Maybe it's not the best, maybe it is. The other Synapse creature in this list is the Norn Emissary. I think the Norn Emissary can do very well. It's already tanky here, and this list is more of a tank type list. You're not going to be throwing your opponent off the table with all your damage. It's about outlasting your opponent. A Norn Emissary that can heal D3 wounds a turn is, I think, going to be pretty good. So I'm going to stick with her in there. We then have 3 units of 3 Pyrovores, because Pyrovores are Harvester, and they're going to be pretty good in this list. A unit of Venomthropes. Pyrovores are relatively tanky, and if you can give them stealth and cover, they become that much more tanky. And the fact that if they're on an objective or next to a Harvester unit on the objective, you get a full 5-wound Pyrovore back every turn. Just the amount of damage your opponent has to put into this unit if they have stealth and cover is going to be a lot for them to deal with. And if they don't deal with them, well, their Flamer's kind of nasty too, so they got to watch out there. And finally, 6 Zoanthropes, because what's more annoying than 6 Zoanthropes that can get a model back every single turn and just continue to put down las cannon fire. I like the list. There are some other iterations you can do of it. I think this list you're going to need to play a lot with strategic reserves. I think you're going to want to strategic reserve at least a unit of Pyrovores and a unit of Haruspex. They will come off on a flank and provide another pushing point for your force, while the rest of them are just going to play tanky, hold the center objective, hold your home objective, and hold 1 more objective. Just play for max primary and defending those, and then going for what secondaries you can. Again, this is my favorite list. I really don't know if it's the most competitive. I know this list lacks speed and it lacks objective control, but it has a lot of chances for Battle Shock, and it is relatively tanky. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. And finally, Invasion Fleet. I'll quickly go through one here for you guys. Invasion Fleet is a beautiful detachment in that it doesn't skew towards a set of units. You can play whatever you want in Invasion Fleet and have a great time, and the list will benefit from the detachment. So what I'm doing in this list is something similar to what I was doing before. We've got a Death Leaper and a Neuro Tyrant, shocker, and we're going with Foot Tyrant with Adaptive Biology. Now the Foot Tyrant is pretty good in this list. Yes, he's expensive, but there are some good battle tactic strats in this detachment, so it's nice to have a Foot Tyrant to take advantage of those. 2 units of Gargoyles for those objectives. Barbgons, generally all good, and they do like to benefit from the sustained or lethal. 2 Exocrines, a Haruspex, 2 Neurolictors, 2 individual Rippers. Norn Emissary, you don't have to take the Norn Emissary. A lot of people probably have one and want to utilize it, so this is probably not a bad detachment for it. Some good Synapse related stratagems, and it's a tanky beast. And then you need 6 Zoanthropes on a Pyrovore. That's generally how I think this list is. It's pretty good. I can't complain. I don't know. I guess I haven't tried it, but I think it's a pretty solid round list. But the beauty of Invasion Fleet is that really anything goes well in it. Everything likes sustained hits. Everything likes lethal hits. You can't really complain. Just make sure you have enough Synapse, because a lot of our detachments are very Synapse based. So you want to have, or a lot of the stratagems are very Synapse based. So you want to have that in the detachment. So that's everything I got. That is one list for every detachment. But let me know in the comments what you think of them. Which one do you want to try? Maybe you've got your own list that's been doing really well. I'm sure all of the Hive Mind below would like to hear about that. And remember, on Tuesday, let me look at the calendar so I know. Tuesday, September 26th at 12:30 p.m. U.S. Central Time, we will be live streaming. I will be using a variation or one of these lists here against Connor and most likely his Necrons. So stay tuned to that. We're really looking forward to a live stream battle report. We're taking a little bit of time off work to make it work, but we're happy to do it. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you, members. Looking forward to seeing as many as you can on that live stream. And we'll see you next time here at Maelstrom Gaming Studios.